Imagine a blank slate. You're handed the keys to a brand new nation. No history, no baggage, just endless possibilities. What kind of government would you create? A democracy where everyone gets a vote? Maybe a benevolent dictatorship with a wise ruler, or something completely different? This thought experiment isn't just a fun what if. It's a question that's been pondered by philosophers for centuries. Their answers offer a fascinating glimpse into the different ways we can organize ourselves, govern our societies, and ultimately live together. So let's take a trip through history and explore the ideas of some of the biggest names in political philosophy. Let's start with Plato, the OG of Western philosophy. Plato wasn't a fan of democracy. He saw it as rule by the mob, where uninformed decisions could lead a nation astray. His solution, philosopher kings. In Plato's ideal republic, society would be led by the wisest, most just individuals, those who had dedicated their lives to studying philosophy and pursuing truth. These philosopher kings wouldn't be driven by greed or personal ambition. Their only goal would be the well-being of the entire state. Now, I know what you're thinking. Sounds great in theory, but who gets to decide who's wise enough to rule? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And one that Plato never fully answered. Next up is Niccolo Machiavelli, a 16th century Italian philosopher known for his ruthless pragmatism. Born in Florence in 1469, Machiavelli lived through a tumultuous period of Italian history, marked by political intrigue and power struggles. His experiences as a diplomat and civil servant deeply influenced his views on power and governance. Machiavelli wasn't concerned with morality or idealism. Instead, he focused on the realpolitik of his time, where the ends often justified the means. He believed that leaders must be willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals, even if it meant bending or breaking the rules. He was all about what worked, even if it meant playing dirty. Machiavelli's approach was pragmatic and unsentimental, emphasizing the importance of results over principles. He argued that a successful ruler must be shrewd, cunning, and, when necessary, ruthless. His most famous work, The Prince, is a handbook for rulers on how to gain and maintain power. Written in 1513, it offers advice on various aspects of leadership, from military strategy to public relations. The Prince remains a controversial and influential text, studied by politicians, historians, and scholars to this day. Machiavelli argued that a prince shouldn't be afraid to be feared, even hated, if it meant keeping order and stability. He believed that fear was a more reliable motivator than love, as it could ensure loyalty and obedience in times of crisis. "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both," he famously wrote. This quote encapsulates Machiavelli's belief that a ruler must prioritize power and control over personal popularity. Machiavelli's ideas might seem shocking to modern sensibilities, but they reflect the harsh realities of his time, a world of warring city-states and constantly shifting alliances. In such a volatile environment, traditional notions of morality and ethics often took a backseat to survival and success. And let's be honest, we still see echoes of Machiavellian tactics in politics today, don't we? From strategic alliances to ruthless competition, the principles Machiavelli outlined continue to resonate in the corridors of power around the world. His legacy endures, reminding us that the pursuit of power often comes with difficult choices and moral compromises. Thomas Hobbes, a 17th century English philosopher, lived through a period of intense political turmoil, the English Civil War. This experience deeply shaped his views on human nature and the need for strong government. Hobbes believed that, in a state of nature, without laws or a ruler, life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. He argued that humans are fundamentally self-interested and driven by a desire for power. Without a strong sovereign to keep them in check, chaos and violence would reign. To escape this bleak existence, Hobbes argued that individuals must surrender some of their freedoms to an absolute ruler in exchange for security and order. This social contract, as he called it, formed the basis of his political philosophy. Marx, A Worker's Paradise. Fast forward to the 19th century, and we meet Karl Marx, the father of communism. Born in 1818 in Trier, Germany, Marx was a philosopher, economist, and revolutionary socialist. His ideas would go on to shape the course of history in ways he could scarcely have imagined. Marx's ideas were a radical departure from the thinkers we've discussed so far. He delved deep into the mechanics of society, economics, and history, proposing that the driving force behind human history was not ideas or individuals, but material conditions and class relations. He believed that history was a story of class struggle between the haves, the bourgeoisie, and the have-nots, the proletariat. This struggle, he argued, was the engine of social change, pushing societies from one stage of development to another. Marx argued that capitalism, with its focus on private property and profit, was inherently exploitative. He saw the capitalist system as one where the bourgeoisie, who owned the means of production, profited from the labor of the proletariat, who were left with only a fraction of the value they created. He envisioned a classless society where the means of production would be owned collectively and everyone would share in the fruits of their labor. This utopian vision was detailed in his seminal works, The Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital, which laid the groundwork for future socialist movements. Marx's ideas had a profound impact on the 20th century, inspiring revolutions and the rise of communist states. From the Russian Revolution of 1917 to the Chinese Revolution of 1949, his theories provided the ideological foundation for these seismic shifts in global politics. While many of these experiments ultimately failed, his critiques of capitalism and inequality continue to resonate today, especially in the face of growing economic disparities. The debates he sparked about the nature of work, wealth, and power remain as relevant as ever, influencing contemporary movements and discussions around the world. Echoes in the modern world. So how do these philosophical heavyweights relate to our world today? Their ideas, though centuries old, continue to shape our political systems and debates. From the bustling streets of our cities to the heated discussions in our parliaments, the echoes of their thoughts are ever present. Their ideas, though centuries old, continue to shape our political systems and debates. For instance, Plato's vision of a society governed by the wise and virtuous might seem like a distant dream in our era of populist leaders and social media echo chambers. Yet the quest for informed, ethical leadership remains as relevant as ever. Plato's vision of rule by the wise and virtuous might seem like a distant dream in our era of populist leaders and social media echo chambers. Yet the quest for informed, ethical leadership remains as relevant as ever. In our current political climate, where misinformation can spread like wildfire, the need for leaders who prioritize truth and virtue is paramount. Yet the quest for informed, ethical leadership remains as relevant as ever. This is evident in the numerous seminars and discussions focused on ethical leadership, as well as the active participation of citizens in the democratic process. Machiavelli's pragmatism, with its emphasis on power and strategy, can be seen in the realpolitik practiced by many nations. His ideas about the nature of power and the necessity of sometimes bending the rules to achieve one's goals are still very much alive in today's political landscape. The ends sometimes justifying the means, even if it requires bending the rules or making unsavory alliances. This Machiavellian approach is often evident in the backroom deals and strategic alliances that shape global politics. Hobbes's fear of chaos and his defense of a strong sovereign state resonate in societies grappling with instability and conflict. His belief that a powerful state is necessary to maintain order and prevent societal collapse is reflected in the actions of governments facing internal and external threats. The debate over security versus freedom, a central theme in his work, continues to rage on. In today's world, this debate is more relevant than ever, as societies balance the need for security with the preservation of individual freedoms. From airport security checks to protests advocating for civil liberties, the tension between these two ideals is a constant presence in our lives. The American experiment, a hybrid model. The United States, often hailed as a beacon of democracy, offers a fascinating case study in how these different philosophical strands can intertwine. The Founding Fathers, steeped in Enlightenment ideals, drew inspiration from diverse thinkers, including Locke, Montesquieu, and even elements of classical republicanism. They sought to create a government that balanced individual liberty with the need for order, incorporating checks and balances to prevent tyranny. The Constitution, with its separation of powers and Bill of Rights, reflects this delicate balancing act. Of course, the American experiment has always been a work in progress. From slavery and segregation to economic inequality and political polarization, the nation has grappled with its share of challenges in its pursuit of a more perfect union. The struggle continues, from ballot box to street protest. Today, around the world, people are still fighting for their vision of a just and equitable society. They're casting votes, organizing protests, and demanding accountability from their leaders. The questions raised by Plato, Machiavelli, Hobbes, and Marx are as relevant as ever. How do we balance individual liberty with the common good? What is the role of government in addressing social and economic inequality? Who should hold power? And how can we ensure that power is used responsibly? These are not just academic questions, they're at the heart of our daily lives, shaping our communities, our nations, and our world. So, what's your utopia? As we've journeyed through the minds of these great thinkers, one thing is clear. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to the question of how we should govern ourselves. The ideal form of government is a matter of ongoing debate, shaped by historical context, cultural values, and the ever-evolving needs of society. So I'll leave you with the same question we started with. If you could build a nation from scratch, what kind of government would you choose? What values would it prioritize? And how would you ensure that it serves the needs of all its citizens? The answer, my friend, is up to you.